In this video, I'm going to talk about how I really want to have kids, but I never will be able to. And it's because my mother and father made sure of it. But on top of this, they say very hurtful stuff. And I'm going to go into this in this video. So what you need to understand is when I was 5 years old, my mother liked to play doctor and fuck around with pills. So she gave me an overdose at age 7. She was giving me handfuls of medication dry. She was bragging to her friends in the kitchen. Look at how many pills I give my child. Oh, I'm such a good mother because I'm drugging my child with so many pills. I'm going to doctor and doctor and doctor and doctor trying to get as many pills as possible. Meanwhile, the doctors looked very concerned about my mother's behavior. Anyways, I experienced an overdose at between the ages of 5 and 7. I needed an ambulance. I lost my vision. I lost the ability to feel my nervous system. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't see Batman on the screen. I tried to scream for help. I tried to ask for help, but I no longer could talk. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't stand up. So I crawled over to a pile of newspapers and I died off right there. Now, luckily, I didn't die, but my breathing slowed down and I went unconscious. Now, my mother saw that this was an emergency situation, got the phone ready, called the doctor's office. They told her to bring me to the emergency room right away. And she said, "You don't know what you're talking about," and hung up because she was responsible for this overdose. So she definitely wasn't going to bring me to the emergency room. Hell no, she could go to jail. She could get in the trouble. So let's just let him die on the newspapers. So this was my mother's behavior. She liked to play around with pills. She gave me an overdose, but she didn't want to get me help. Then I ate a mushroom outside, and instead of giving me a regular dose of Epicac, she decided to punish me with it. So she decided to give me the whole bottle. Not only that, then she bragged for about 10 more years about how she liked to punish me with extra medication. So there's many witnesses that she spoke up and said, "Yeah, I gave him extra drugs, so what? What are you going to do about it? I give him extra medication. Yeah, I gave him a whole bottle of Epicac as a punishment, so what?" So now that you understand what my mother was like, and she did this from age 5 all the way to 19, as well as she was brainwashing me, trying to get me to believe that I needed more drugs than I needed. Like she tried to get me to believe that playing with action figures means you're schizophrenic and to take drugs like Zyprexa for that because of action figures. She wanted me to take Zyprexa because I like to play with action figures and that's it. But the doctors wouldn't allow it because she had no good reason to drug me with that. So I never got drugged for schizophrenia as much as my mother tried to make up lies about that one. So now that you understand my mother's mental illness, understand this. A lot of these pills my mother was messing around with are very dangerous. They have very dangerous side effects. They can make you sterile. They can cause problems with your nervous system. They can cause depression. They can cause suicidal thoughts. They can cause heart palpitations. They can cause skin reactions. They can cause a lack of appetite. They can cause gain of appetite. They can cause dizziness, fainting, so much more. And my mother was giving me extra. She was forgetting doses. She was adding in her own opiates. She was drugging me on Halloween with God who knows what. Well, at the age of 13 to 19, I realized I had no sperm coming out. Now, I don't really want to go into too much detail here because I'm sure no one really wants to hear about sperm and masturbation or any of those normal things. But all you need to understand is for my entire life, I could never produce more than one bead of sperm. There was never very much coming out. And at the age of 31, that hasn't changed. So when people like say fill up a cup at the doctor's to do to check your how much sperm you make, mine is less than a drop that comes out. So I know for a fact that my sperm has been affected. Now this was right at age 13 when I first started masturbating. I realized this, and it's gone on to age 31. Now, I did no drugs at that age. The only thing I did was start smoking cigarettes. I hated alcohol. I hated drugs. I hated all that stuff. But this has been going on for life. Now, there's a very good chance my mother and father basically made it so I'll never have kids. So there's a very good chance, thanks to my mother, I'll never ever be able to produce children. This is a fact. Now, even if nobody wants to look into this, it's still a fact. It's something that I can never fix. If I have a child, it will be a miracle. because I've gone online and asked a couple questions about what it means to have just a drop of sperm come out. And it basically means there's almost no chance of having children. It's a 1 in a billion chance with that little bit of guys. And that's if they're alive. That's if your sperm is alive. What we don't know. I haven't gone to do an actual sample. And even if I did, I can't get any in a cup because it's only a drop. So it's very unlikely. But I have talked to doctors and I have got some information to understand that if you're only producing a drop, then that's not enough to have children. It's supposed to be a lot more than a teardrop's worth. And that's all I get is like as much of tears come out of your eyes with one drop. It's probably like an eyedropper. You know the amount of like one drop that comes out. It's very very uncommon. And don't think that I grew up in a program with 16 other boys, program after program, and I only got to go with this crazy mother on weekends. But she decided my drugs my whole life, so she just and as a child she was controlling of these drugs. So when I was living in Westford in Massachusetts, oh boy, was she drugging the shit out of me, giving me overdoses and extra bottles of Epicac and all this crap. Then when we come back to Massachusetts, after she traffics me around the country, she continues this behavior. Now I can't make children. I find out. This is a big problem. This is big concern. It scares the shit out of me that somebody else can make a choice that has affected me from age 13 to 31. I mean, the fact that I can't produce any sperm like a normal person, that affects my mental health status. I can't tell my girlfriends about it. I have to kind of hide it. When they say, "Oh, I want children, I want children," I have to go along with their bullshit and I can't tell them what my mother did to me, and there's a very good chance they're not going to get any children from me because when they find that out, maybe they won't want me anymore. On top of this, then I have to hear by the way, my mother passed away in 2011 because she was popping those own pills. She was kind of drugging herself and drinking, just like she was doing it to me. So keep that in mind. My father remarries right away, my mother's best friend, and then I have to hear them say stupid shit like, "You should never have children." Well, good, because you guys took that right away from me. I mean, you know how insulting it is to hear somebody say you should never have children when they basically just neutered you and you don't get a choice? So, my father and mother say I should never have children, and they made sure I would never have children. Oh my God. Maybe they had a plan. Maybe they planned this. I have no idea. All I know is my mother was doing fucked up shit with pills. You don't do that. You don't fuck around with those pills. But I mean, before I even had a choice, before I even knew what was going on, my mother was fucking with pills and she was brainwashing me too, telling me, "You need these for life." Why? You just need them for life. Don't ever stop taking them. We're giving you extra here. We're going to take these, messing around with them. Give me opiates too. And then on Halloween, I had a mysterious illness every time my mother needed to get her way. I'm not kidding. Anytime my mother got outvoted by my father or the family, all of a sudden, I would get very sick after ingesting something my mother gave me. And this happened for years until I was about 13 and 14. Once when I got to the age where I might catch on to what she was doing, she stopped. But from the age of 5 all the way to 14, anytime my mother needed to get her way, make me tired, make sure I don't go out for trick-or-treating, she would give me something to ingest, like a cookie or medication, and then all of a sudden I would get incredibly sick. Like, for instance, we had to go to an adoption party in some courthouse or something where I was on a wooden bench. My mother had me ingest pills right before. I got so dizzy and tired in the car, I passed out. Then we had to get me into this courthouse thingy. I don't know what this adoption thingy actually was, but there was a wooden bench what I passed out on. Now, I couldn't really walk out of there because my mother's now destroyed my nervous system. She now drugged me and told me to ingest drugs. And now I can't walk. I mean, the room is spinning when I try to open my eyes. I'm tired. So she just picks me up and kind of like drags me and carries me to the car, which I fall back to sleep. Then we're at the adoption party. Now, this is like a couple hours later. I'm still feeling the drugs. I'm still feeling high as a kite, like she gave me a Perk 30. Like she gave a 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, a Perk 30. So at this point, we're at the adoption party. Now, don't mix this up with my like my church parties, because we had me get baptized and stuff like that, and there was parties too. But this was my adoption party. So we're in this, like, I think it was a ski loft. I don't know what this place was actually. And people are coming up to me going, "Are you depressed? Aren't you happy to be in this family? Oh, look at him. He looks so sad. How could this kid be sad that he's adopted?" I wasn't sad. I was looking at the floor, looking for a place to curl up and fall asleep. But I'm so drugged up that that's what I'm doing. I'm literally trying to find a place to fall asleep. The room is spinning. My legs are weak. I can't think straight. I'm just extremely exhausted from the pills my mother just had me ingest. But none of the people at this party knew this. All they knew is I look sad, tired, and exhausted. And they have no idea why. Because my mother's not telling them, she just had me ingest pills. So my mother did this stuff constantly. Now, I can't have children. That's a very good conclusion if you're only having a drop of sperm come out. On top of this, then I have to hear stuff like I should never have children. So, first you cripple me, then you make fun of me for what you did to me, and then you hurt my feelings, and then you don't even get to know me. Like, for instance, I am great with children. I am way better than my mother, way better than my father. I'm actually one of the best caregivers in my family. Not that they'll probably admit to this, but if you talk to the teachers when I was working at the ECC for special needs kids, they'll tell you I did great. If you talk about, if you ask my nephews and nieces who I raised, they'll say I did great. And this is while having the spins on drugs. Today, as an adult, not on these drugs that my mother brainwashed me into taking as an adult, like from age 16 to 19, I was kind of taking them with my mother's advice. She brainwashed me into continue taking these medications. And then from 19 on, I was trying to figure out why I should take these drugs. Why am I on drugs? They're not helping me. I'm taking most of them for sleep now. I go into the doctors and I say I'm having problems sleeping, and they give me Seroquel, Thorazine, Trazodone, all these same medications. At least I'm not taking the Remeron, Lamictal, Zyprexa, just Xanax, Ritalin, and that goes way, way more back than that. We got antidepressants, antipsychotics. We got all these other, we got schizophrenia medications, all these medications based off of my mother's lies and fantasies. So I want to make it clear that this is wrong to do to anybody. Now, still today, I have no justice for this. I literally have to suffer some more. I'm living in my mother's fantasy today because she killed herself in 2011 before taking responsibility for her actions. And my family is very good at hiding it. My father is running and trying to hide it and saying as many hurtful things as he can. Like, it's your fault you were crippled at age 5. It's your fault that we moved to Texas. It's your fault you got high as a kite before you were 13 years old. No, what's my fault is my drug abuse from age 16 to age 19. And honestly, that's a shared blame. Because what was I doing with those drugs? I was trying to treat a neurological disorder I didn't understand. So yes, I shouldn't have made those choices. But I went to a doctor and my mother decided to lie and manipulate. Now, I didn't tell my mother to lie to the doctors in Westford at age 7. If she had told the truth, if she didn't lie and manipulate as much as she did, if she didn't play around with drugs as much as she did, if she didn't avoid responsibility, then I wouldn't have needed to do that because the doctors would have been talking to me about my neurological disorder. Hey, the numbness in your hands and feet that make you drop stuff and bump into stuff, that's not normal. We got to have a discussion about that. That would have helped. The fact that you shake all the time and the cold slings you to the ground and certain noises cause you to have seizures, that would have been good to talk about. Also, if my mother and father didn't decide to stick me in a cabin up in New Mexico and only see me for 1 hour a month while I'm getting abused and left, they might have saw the seizure. I had a seizure outside by a tree, but they left me while all the other kids were inside. They came back later and go, "What are you doing out here? Everybody else is inside." I'm like, "I don't know. I just woke up on the ground. I have no idea what's going on." Well, now as an adult, after this has happened many, many more times, I realize that these are called seizures. I shake really severely. My legs and body stops working. I fall to the ground or I squat, and then my whole body shoots like flat. Then I go unconscious, and then I wake up all scratched up and bloody, and I don't have any memory of what is going on really. Well, I know as an adult that this is most likely seizures because in Lowell, Massachusetts, I had a doctor describe this to me. And after doing years of research and after talking to many people who have seen me in this condition, I know that these are full-blown seizures. When I drive my nervous system, I overstimulate it. Now, it's like getting shocked with a taser all the time. It's very hard to talk through it, too, because take a taser, stick it on your back, put the voltage on low, and then try to have a conversation with your buddy. Tell me how well your conversation goes. That's how I have trouble. When I'm outside, the voltage goes up, making it harder to talk. When I'm walking, the voltage goes up. When I'm trying to use my arms and legs, the voltage goes up. When I move my thumb, my legs will sometimes jump by themselves because the electric shock will go into my leg because I'm trying to move my thumb. This has been going on for 25 years. Not from any actions or any choices I ever made. My mother made a very bad choice. She gave me a bunch of drugs because she didn't want to watch Batman. She probably mixed some downers like Percocet into my pills like she did before, and then I had an overdose, and she didn't want to bring me to the emergency room because she would get into trouble. So she left me to die on a pile of newspapers hoping I would be okay. On top of that, when I woke up, I had permanent damage to my nervous system and brain. And then shortly after this overdose, she thought it was a good idea to give me extra Epicac and destroy my stomach and esophagus. She gave me a full bottle of Epicac as a punishment. This is the type of behaviors my mother continued all the way through her life. And I'm still suffering for those choices today. Now, luckily, I have owned my own mistakes. And I know I'm sober. I have no want to ever treat myself again. But I do need some doctor to start treating this after 25 years. And I've been trying for years and years and years and years and years and now. But keep in mind, my father and his new wife is running from this, and they continue to lie and manipulate to try to keep their happiness. For instance, if I had the doctor call and ask them about my childhood history. Now, my father's the only one that has that. But I guarantee you that his wife, his new wife that knows nothing, she's completely clueless on this topic, would make up a story like, it's all a fantasy, don't believe him. He's psycho, he's crazy, don't believe him. And then I won't be able to get medical care. On top of that, somebody is pretending to be my mother, calling my doctors, telling them exactly that don't look into this, don't look into this. Just ignore him, just ignore him. So I never get help with this. I've been trying for so long. And I'm going to die from this. It's killing me. It's killing me, and it doesn't have to. Nobody else has to die from something that's easily treatable. But I do. I can't even get help for, like, let's say I get a broken leg. Because my mother spent so much time trying to make sure doctors would never, ever listen to me, when I go in there for a broken leg, I have to beg them to do an x-ray. Beg them, please, do an x-ray, please, I'm begging you. It's really broken. And then after I beg and go back to the emergency room 3 times, then they finally do an x-ray and go, oh, it is broken. Here you go, let's give them a cast. But nobody else has to go through these craziness. And that's an example that isn't that great, but I'll give you another example. I was bleeding internally into my testicles. Something was seriously wrong. So I went to the emergency room. They played like it was a mental illness. Then I went to my primary care. They wouldn't schedule me an appointment. My primary care thought it wasn't important enough that his patient is bleeding into his testicles because he thinks it's a fantasy thanks to my mother and father lying so much. On top of this, then when I finally get some other primary care to look at it, he comes in the room with that clear, this is all made up look. He's ignoring what I'm saying. He's not writing down anything I'm telling him. But then finally he goes, well, let me see a look at it. So I pull my pants down and I show the doctor. Then his face changes. He goes, and the words out of his mouth was, oh, this is real. Those were the exact words. Well, what'd you think this was? Why is my doctor saying, oh, this is real? What, did he think it wasn't? Why would my doctors assume that I would come to the doctor's office for something fake? Why would they do that? I have never done that one time in my life. I have never, ever, ever, and I swear on the Holy Bible that I have never gone to the doctors with anything made up or fake. But it sure seems like the doctors treat me like that, like I have hypochondria. And I think it's because my mother tried to make sure none of them would listen to me. I probably have a bunch of made up hypochondria. He makes up stories, he lies, whatever the hell keeps this quiet. What my mother and father did to me. Because if anybody ever helps me with this, maybe they'll have to take responsibility for their actions. I mean, my mother's probably burning in hell right now from what she did to me, and all she's doing is waiting for somebody to take responsibility so she can go to heaven. Because I've forgiven her for this, but I still need help. And my father and his families do not wish to help me with this one bit. They do not wish to take responsibility for their actions. They don't care that this was going on in their own house. My mother admitted to giving me extra Epicac multiple times in front of other family members, and not a single of them called the authority. My mother admitted that she was blaming her own alcohol usage on me, and then flipped her story back and forth for 2 weeks. But yet nobody thought that that was a problem. When I jumped in a pool and got injured on a fence, my mother told the doctors I was self-harming. Nobody thought to speak otherwise. Even though everybody knew that that was bullshit, nobody stopped her from telling the doctors that that was self-harming. On top of this, when I was bumping into stuff because I couldn't move my body properly, my mother called it more self-harming. That's so that nobody would ever listen to what actually happened. Still to this day, when I go to the doctors, I get looked at like a crazy person because I'm bleeding internally. Like literally, I'll just have some injury, like I fell off a bike and I got stabbed and I got a piece of metal stuck in me. I'll go to the emergency room and they'll just look at me like I'm making it up. That's thanks to my mother. That has nothing to do with me. I've never, ever, ever lied to the doctors in the emergency room in my life. Even when I was 13 years old, whenever I was brought to the emergency room for pot or something, I told the doctors I smoked pot. And then the program would say, "Why didn't you tell us that?" I said, "Because you guys aren't doctors." I said, "I don't have to tell you guys I smoke pot. That's none of your business." I said, "Everybody in the program is smoking pot. But if my doctor asks me, I'm going to tell him I smoking pot." That's a rule I have. Always be honest with your doctors. It's a rule I've had since age 13, and I've always stuck by it. But here's the problem. Just because you're honest with the doctor doesn't mean your mother didn't brainwash the shit out of you and confuse the fucking shit out of you. See, I've never been to medical school. When a doctor asked me what conditions I had during childhood, like depression, suicidal thoughts, the movement, the lack of speech, there's so much. I didn't know how to describe it, so I just did what I was told. My mother told me, say this, say you're depressed. And I did. In my house, if I didn't do what my mother said, oh boy, did I get it. It was jump when we say jump. There is no other thing. You jump when we say jump. And on top of this, I wasn't allowed to speak up against my mother either. If my mother was, say, accidentally gave me an overdose and something was wrong with my body, and I brought that up at the doctor's office like I did, oh boy, did my mother get violent and mad. I wasn't allowed to get help. That is absolutely clear. I am not allowed to speak about this stuff. If I do, like I am on these videos, my father will most likely hire an attorney to fuck up my life some more. And that's probably what he's doing right now. They're probably calling my doctors, telling them that this is a fantasy, calling their attorneys, trying to cover their own asses, trying to run away as far as they can so that way they can avoid responsibility. But they'll see me one day in heaven. And I'm going to be blocking them at the pearly gates. Absolutely. If I don't get at least the truth out of them, if I don't get medical care and they want me to live in a dead woman's fantasy, I will block the pearly gates until I have a talk with them. And maybe they can just go back to Earth and suffer some more. Maybe I'll ask God to send them back getting tortured in some other country by some pharmaceutical corporation. That's none of my business. All I know is that if I die this way, suffering on the side of the road in the woods because my mother avoided responsibility, I will be up at the pearly gates waiting for them. And even if somebody else goes before me, we all meet up in the end, and it all comes out. The truth always comes out. And they can try to make me cry. They can try to hurt me. They can call it a fantasy. They can call me a liar, which just causes more damage, like they do to my doctors. Call my doctor and say I'm just a liar. Now, keep in mind, my father hasn't seen me in years. I had to beg him just to come by for like an hour on a beach. I literally just had to have a call. I'm trying to get him to admit. I mean, even when I stopped by in Maine, and I told him, "You left me to die on a pile of newspapers. Don't talk bad about your mother. Don't talk bad. How dare you talk bad about your mother?" So he has no concern about my safety and the fact that I died on a pile of newspapers, or I was dying. I didn't die. I lost my nervous system, and I could have died. So I shouldn't say that. I should say they put a life in danger, and my whole body and brain was fried that day. Now, I'm trying to have a conversation with him about this, but once again, he has no concern about my safety or my health. Instead, he has concern about covering his second wife's what they did to me. That's all he cares about. Cover it up. Cover it up. Don't take responsibility for your actions. Oh, that might be too hard. Might be too hard. It's easier to fucking hurt somebody else like me. My father finds it much easier to hurt somebody else. And his third wife, oh, don't even start with her. Oh boy, she's very happy to hurt me. She's very happy to make phone calls without even knowing what the situation is. I mean, the stuff that I'm witnessing is so fucked up. Their heads, they need help really bad. I need help with my nervous system so I can just move on with my life. I need an attorney to clear out all my dead mother's bullshit. I can't live in her fantasy. I can't live in a fantasy. That's for certain. I cannot live in a dead woman's fantasy. So that has to be cleared up. Then I need medical help with my nervous system, what's been going on for 25 years. I need help with that from an actual competent doctor. Then I'll need to work with Social Security and go back to work. Then I can move on with my fucking life and continue helping people. I can continue working with the Catholic churches or Christian churches. I can continue working a job at an essential service that I get to talk to people and hear their issues. I get to continue working with the disabled and the elderly and disabled children. I get to continue all that. Especially that I might not ever be able to have children. It's really important for me to give back in society. But I'm losing my ability to walk. I can't drive. Oh, by the way, my mother took my ability to drive away, so I've never driven. They wanted me to hurt people too. They knew my legs couldn't stay still. They saw my legs bouncing around. They saw me bumping into stuff. They saw my hand twitching. They knew I couldn't aim with my hand. They knew cold made me really bad. But they wanted me to go on the road. They were too afraid to teach me how to drive themselves, but they were okay with putting other people in danger. They were always afraid that maybe I would be putting them into danger if I was driving, but they didn't care about the rest of the world. They didn't care if I got in an accident and I got seriously hurt because I can't control my movements and I have no coordination in my legs or arms due to a neurological disorder. Nobody seemed to care about that, but I do. I care about all people. I care about my soul. So until I get some medical help with this, I can't drive. I mean, Triliptal is a good start, but that's just something I came up with the neurologist. So that's a good stopgap measure, but that's only something that we can do while we wait for a diagnosis. But the diagnosis will never come because my father and his third wife keep on calling people and trying to make sure they drop out on me. They even they even use their money to fuck me over instead of help me. I'm not even kidding. Like for instance, I was dying on the side of the road. Car ran over my hair because I had an infection in my mouth, and I kept on having seizures. Now I told them this. I said I have 5 infections in my mouth, but the 25-year-old disorder is causing me to fall down. I'm gonna lose my job. I cannot work falling down on the side of the road. There's no transportation. There's nothing. We got a big problem here. They said, "We're in Florida. Handle it yourself." Okay. So I keep on working at my job in essential service during COVID. I keep on going. I keep on going. I keep on going. But within 6 months to a year, I'm falling down some more. Cars are running over my hair. I'm all cut up. Ambulances are taking me to the hospital. I need to make this stop. So I made the decision once again to treat myself. That backfired. That backfired, and I ended up needing surgery. And then they wanted me to pay him back, obviously. So I sent every single tax return to my father and his third wife. I kept on sending my tax return. The first one was about over 1,000. The second, it's over 2,000 when I sent them so far, and they spent more back. But none of that had to happen. All I needed was to get the teeth out, and I need this 25-year-old disorder. See, they keep on doing this. They'll try to put the blame on me that I'm falling down on the side of the road for 25 years because they haven't fixed the original issue. So it's creating more issues and more issues and more issues and more issues. Like, for instance, why am I not on Social Security? If I had Social Security, none of that would have had to happen. If my mother didn't OD me, none of that would have happened. If my mother took responsibility for her actions and actually discussed this with a doctor when I tried, instead of lying to them, then we would have medical treatment now I could use and utilize. But none of that's the case. So instead, you have a man who's disabled, bleeding on the side of the road, trying to go into work after he just had a seizure, literally not getting any medical care and not collecting his Social Security. All because my father continues to try to hide this and then throw me a couple bones to keep me quiet. I mean, if you fix the original mistake, then I won't need any other fixing. The original mistake is the overdose at age 7 that destroyed my nervous system. I've had problems ever since. That is the original mistake. Then you got to fix Social Security. Social Security was lied and manipulated to. My mother made up story after story after story. Well, that has to be cleared up as well. Then I can apply for Social Security for the real life stuff that's on this earth. The stuff you can see with your own 2 eyeballs. The stuff that your eyeballs can see. Not the stuff where you twist and make up words to make it seem like something else. That's bullshit. When somebody has blood in their testicles, that's something you can see. When somebody has a seizure and they get cut up on the ground, that's something you can see. When a child is bumping into stuff and their legs are getting cut open, that's something you can see. When your child is learning how to speak one way, and then all of a sudden the teachers see a big change in the way he's speaking and moving, that's something you can see. That's why the teachers saw it. See, my mother gave me an overdose at age 7, but people noticed it. People noticed the sudden change in my body. The teachers noticed. So they put me in speech therapy, doctor. They started asking me questions like, what just changed with you? I don't know what changed. So they called home. They started wanting me to get more help. I started speaking up to the doctors about it. I started telling them how I lost my vision. I lost my feeling in my body after my mother gave me a bunch of pills. I started trying to get help for this. And then my mother brought me to Texas. Then she brought me to New Mexico. Then she brought me to Maine. She trafficked me all around the country. And then I didn't get the help I needed. And then now today, there's a very good chance I'm going to die. And I'm going to have to suffer a very slow death because of my mother's and father's choices. And now with this corrupt, broken system, with the healthcare broken, people have a hard enough time getting proper healthcare without a whole fantasy they're living in. But I have to live in my mother's fucking fantasy, and I want out. My mother's lies I don't have to live in. It's driving me crazy. I can't live in another person's fantasy my whole life. It's going to drive me off the wall. You can't do that. You can't have somebody else like if I had my father and I tried to make him out seem like a senile old man that was a serial killer that really likes to torture animals. And then everybody gets on my side and we lock him up in a home. And then they start drugging the shit out of him and holding him down. Then they start giving him electrical shock treatments in the head. I don't think my father would be very good. I think that if he lived in a fantasy I made up for him, he would go insane. And same thing with my nephew. Let's say that I made up a fantasy about my nephew. We said my nephew liked to harm other people. We said my nephew was a kleptomaniac. He couldn't help himself. He was stealing everything all the time. Let's say we'll call my nephew schizophrenic. We'll say that he talks all the time and we need Zyprexa, and we get my nephew on Zyprexa. I don't think my nephew is going to do too well living in my fantasy land that I made up for him. Instead, we need to base the information on the things I see my nephew doing. Now, let's say my nephew is playing with action figures. Wow, he might be a good director someday. Maybe I should put him in acting school. Well, let's say my nephew is trying to play sports and he's doing great. Well, that's great. It looks like he has a great coordination. But let's say my nephew has trouble speaking because he speaks two different languages. Okay, so he's a little slower at English because he speaks Portuguese. Okay. Wow, that's something we should put on the file and we should be bilingual. Well, this child is bilingual, but he had slower development of English. That's not a fantasy. That's proven because we know he speaks Portuguese, he's learning English, and he's behind other students. That's something that you can physically see. But the shit that my mother made up, the shit like, for instance, my mother just drugged the shit out of me with pills, and a lot of them, if you read the paperwork, well, my mother and father never read anything. They decided to play doctor. My mother was playing doctor, just playing with pills left and right. She even gave me some opiates on a plane. I said I had a headache, wanting a Tylenol. She gave me opiates. She gave me opiates at the age of like 14. Not only that, she gave me an OD at age 7. She gave me a whole bottle of Epicac at about age 7. She just kept on doing this shit over and over and over and over and over and over. I mean, my first high was before I was 10 years old. The first time I got fucked up high, I was before 10. But I didn't choose to do it. I had no choice in the matter. This is the shit that really fucking me over. This is the shit that's gonna get me killed. And this is the shit that bothers me every day of my life.